Have you ever felt trapped inside your own mind, like your thoughts won't stop no matter how hard you try to quiet them? You tell yourself to calm down, to stay present, to just stop thinking, but it never works. The more you try to control your mind, the more it spins. Thought after thought, scenario after scenario, until you're no longer living in the moment. You're living in your head. You go about your day, answering emails, smiling at people, doing everything you're supposed to do. But underneath the surface, there's a constant noise. A restless voice asking, what if this goes wrong? What if they don't like me? What if I mess it up again? And you don't know how to turn it off. You try meditation. You try journaling. You try distracting yourself with music, with work, with scrolling. But the thoughts always come back. Sometimes louder, sometimes meaner, sometimes pretending to help. When all they do is make you feel more lost. You tell yourself it's just stress, that it'll pass. But deep down, it's more than that. It's fear. Fear of losing control. The need to figure everything out before anything can go wrong. But here's the truth. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're stuck in a pattern your mind created to protect you. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And overthinking is one of the most clever ways we avoid ourselves. We think we're solving problems, but really we're running from the part of us that doesn't want to feel. The sadness, the doubt, the fear, the ache of not knowing. But here's the paradox. Peace doesn't come from more thinking. It comes from stepping into the place your thoughts are trying to cover up. That's why this video isn't about thinking less, it's about connecting more. The answer isn't in the mind. It's in what the mind has forgotten. The body, the breath, the present moment. You don't need more thoughts. You need space. You need silence. You need to come home to yourself. And there's a way back. It takes 1 minute, one choice, one breath. And it starts now. Stay with me, because for the first time you might finally stop thinking, not by fighting your mind, but by finally feeling again. You think overthinking is just a bad habit, something your brain does when it's too idle, too anxious, or too uncertain. But that belief is only the surface. It's what you tell yourself to stay in control, to keep the fear at bay. The truth is, overthinking isn't a glitch in your mind, it's a strategy. It's your inner self desperately trying to manage what feels unmanageable. Your mind spins not because it enjoys chaos, but because it's trying to protect you. It's replaying conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios, dissecting every word and every silence, because it still believes that if you just think hard enough, you'll finally find safety. You'll find the answer. You'll stop the pain. But you won't. The more you think, the more you feed the spiral, and the deeper you fall into it. You know this already. The clarity never comes, the peace never arrives, and yet you cannot stop. Because what you're actually running from is not the unknown future, but the unresolved present. The overthinking is not about what might happen. It is about what already happened. The trauma that hasn't been integrated. The emotion you've buried. The tension in your chest that you keep ignoring. Thinking too much is not a sign of intellect. It is a sign of distance from yourself. The thoughts are just the noise. The real message is buried deeper. And this is the great illusion. You believe you're getting closer to the truth, but you're actually drifting away from it. With every overanalyzed detail, you're creating distance from your inner knowing. And that distance only deepens your anxiety. Overthinking is not a mental flaw. It's a symptom. It's a signal that something within you is asking to be seen. Not solved, but seen. And until you have the courage to look inward, to feel what you've avoided, the spiral will not stop. The mind will not rest. And the clarity you seek will remain just out of reach. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You think overthinking is a problem of the mind, but it's actually a problem of the ego. You believe you're just trying to understand things better, make better decisions, avoid mistakes. But beneath that, something else is happening. You're trying to stay in control. Carl Jung warned us, the ego is not the enemy, but it's not the truth either. The ego is a mask, a defense system, and one of its most sophisticated defenses is overthinking. Because thinking feels safe, it feels responsible, it feels like you're doing something. But in reality, you're running, not from the world, but from yourself. The ego hates uncertainty, it hates vulnerability. And when faced with emotions or truths it cannot handle, it builds a fortress made of thoughts. That's what overthinking really is, a fortress. You think you're solving something, but you're actually avoiding something. You're not getting closer to clarity. You're just circling the same fear over and over again. The spiral continues because the ego would rather stay busy than be still. Stillness is where the unconscious starts to rise. The memories, the pain, the doubt, the old wounds. And that's what your ego fears most. That's why every time you get close to silence, your mind starts racing again. Not because there's something urgent to fix, but because there's something unresolved to feel. And that's the trap. Overthinking isn't about intelligence. It's not about insight. It's about fear. It's about avoidance. It's about a deep inner belief that if you just think long enough, hard enough, wide enough, you'll finally feel safe. But safety doesn't come from the mind. It comes from integration. As Jung said, we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your thoughts are not the enemy, but they are not the whole truth either. They are signals, they are symptoms. And when they spin out of control, it means something deeper inside you is asking to be faced. Not fixed, faced. And the moment you understand that, you begin to see the spiral for what it is. A distraction, a loop, a beautiful illusion the ego uses to keep you from going deeper. But you don't have to stay trapped. The way out begins not with more thinking, but with something else. Something simpler, quieter, and far more powerful. And that's what we'll uncover next. You think your problem is overthinking, that if you could just stop the spiral of thoughts, you'd finally feel peace. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The thoughts aren't the real issue. They're the surface, the symptom. What really drives your overthinking lies much deeper. Carl Jung called it the unconscious. Not just a storage room of forgotten memories, but the hidden engine running your entire inner life. You keep asking, why can't I stop thinking? But the better question is, what am I trying not to feel? Because that's what overthinking really is. A defense, a distraction, a clever way to avoid something you're not yet ready to face. Pain, fear, shame, longing, old wounds you've never given a name. The mind spins because the soul is screaming, and you're not listening. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The panic you feel when things go quiet? That's not boredom, that's something inside trying to rise to the surface. But you've built a habit. When the feeling comes, you escape into thought. You analyze, you replay, you predict. You try to gain control, not over life, but over emotion. Because the unconscious is messy. It doesn't speak in facts. It speaks in symbols, in moods, in dreams, and most of all, in the body. That tight chest, that sinking stomach, that sudden wave of sadness that makes no sense. These are not random. They are messages. The thoughts are just noise layered on top. And until you learn to drop beneath the noise, to listen, to feel, to allow, the cycle will repeat over and over. Not because you're broken, but because your inner self is asking for integration, not avoidance. You don't stop overthinking by thinking better. You stop by becoming aware of what's beneath the thinking. And when you do, when you stop trying to fix your thoughts and start feeling the truth they're covering, something shifts. You begin to realize your mind is not the enemy. Your emotions are not a threat, and your overthinking was never a flaw. It was a signal, and it's time to answer it. In the next part, we'll explore how a single minute, done the right way, can begin to break that cycle and bring you home, not to more control, but to connection. You think you can think your way out of overthinking, that if you just analyze more, if you figure out every angle, you'll finally feel at peace. But that's the lie, because the more you try to solve your mind with your mind, the deeper you sink. Overthinking is not a problem of intelligence. It's a problem of disconnection. You're not thinking too much, you're feeling too little. You've left your body behind, abandoned the present moment, and gone to war inside your head. Jung understood this spiral. He knew that the mind, when left unchecked by the body, becomes a labyrinth, a place where you lose yourself in imaginary futures and replays of the past. That's why real clarity doesn't come from more thought. It comes from a shift in presence, a return to the only place where life actually happens. Your body. There is a simple trick, one that takes less than a minute. And it's not a philosophical idea, so it's a physical action. When you catch yourself spiraling, stop and feel. Your feet on the ground, your breath entering and leaving your nose, the texture of your hands, the tension in your shoulders. Ask yourself, not what am I thinking, but what am I sensing right now? This tiny shift from analysis to awareness changes everything, because you've just stepped out of the echo chamber of the ego and into the grounding presence of the self. Jung taught that the unconscious is not just filled with darkness, it also holds the wisdom of the body. And when we ignore that wisdom, we become prisoners of our thoughts. Overthinking is a symptom. It's what happens when your mind is trying to do the job of your whole being. But your being is not just a brain, it's a breath, a heartbeat, a feeling, a silence. And that silence, that space you create when you return to your body, is where true answers arise. Not as thoughts, but as inner knowing. The kind of knowing that doesn't argue, doesn't spiral, doesn't need validation. It just is. So no, you don't need another productivity hack, another journal prompt, another overcomplicated routine. You need a pause, a breath, a return. Back to yourself. Because the mind can lie, but the body never does. In the next part, we'll explore how this moment of grounded awareness becomes the bridge to something deeper, a state where thinking fades and intuition speaks. Let's go further. You're not just breaking a pattern, you're waking up. Most people think that the solution to overthinking is to think better thoughts, to fix the mind by using the mind, to replace negative with positive, fear with hope, doubt with certainty. But what if that's just another trap? What if the more you try to control your thoughts, the more control they have over you? Carl Jung didn't believe in fixing the mind by force. He believed in illuminating it. He understood that overthinking is not a problem of intelligence. It's a symptom of disconnection. Disconnection from your body, from your feelings, from your unconscious, from who you really are beneath all the noise. You want peace, but you keep looking for it in logic, in control, in repetition. And that's why it keeps slipping away. Jung called the mind a servant, not a master. But when the servant tries to rule, chaos follows. The truth is, overthinking is not solved by thinking less. It is solved by knowing more. Knowing yourself. Because when you truly know yourself, you no longer have to guess, project, or obsess. You begin to feel from the inside what no external certainty can provide. But here's the hard truth. To reach this place, you have to lose your addiction to control. You have to let go of the need to understand everything immediately, to fix every emotion as soon as it arises. You must surrender, not in weakness, but in awareness. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. And you cannot become whole if you're constantly splitting yourself into pieces. Good versus bad, rational versus emotional, right versus wrong. You stop overthinking when you stop fighting yourself. When you let go of the internal war and come home to the center of your being, that place where silence isn't empty, but full of answers. That place where you no longer ask, what should I think? But rather, what do I already know? That kind of knowing is not loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It whispers through calm, and it only arrives when you stop chasing and start listening. Overthinking is a surface-level storm. Inner knowing is the deep ocean beneath. And when you live from that ocean, you are no longer shaken by waves. You feel them, you witness them, but you are not them. This is where true clarity begins. Not by resisting the noise, but by returning to the stillness beneath it. In the final part of this series, we'll go one step further. We'll explore how this kind of clarity can become your new baseline. How to make stillness not just a moment, but a way of life. Let's complete the journey together. You're almost home. Most people think overthinking is the problem, something to fix, something to eliminate. But what if it's not the enemy? What if it's a messenger, a signal from deep inside you? An alarm that something in your unconscious is trying to speak. You just never learned how to listen. Carl Jung didn't see overthinking as a flaw. He saw it as a fragmentation, when the conscious mind gets flooded because the unconscious has been ignored. You keep trying to control the thoughts, push them down, shut them off, but they only get louder. Why? Because the mind is not malfunctioning. It's doing its job. It's screaming for you to pay attention. When your thoughts won't stop racing, when you replay the conversation, the mistake, the what if over and over, it's not because you're broken. It's because something inside you is unresolved. A fear, a memory, a belief you've never questioned. Overthinking is not weakness. It's a clue, a signpost that your attention is in the wrong place. Not on the situation, but on the self behind the situation. The problem isn't thinking too much. It's thinking without awareness. And the solution isn't silence. It's not pretending you're fine. The real solution is turning inward, asking, what am I afraid to feel right now? What truth am I avoiding? Because every thought spiral is a defense mechanism. And the moment you face what's underneath it, you take your power back. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Overthinking is a flashlight into that darkness. And once you stop fighting it, it becomes a tool, not something to fear, but something to follow. So the next time your mind feels like a storm, don't run. Sit with it, breathe into it, follow the signal back to its source. Let it show you the wound that's still open, the story that still hurts. And when you do, something shifts. The noise quiets, the tension softens. You're no longer trapped in your head. You're anchored in yourself. Because the opposite of overthinking isn't silence, it's clarity. And clarity comes when you finally stop avoiding what's already true. Let this be your turning point. From endless thought to inner knowing.